I guess we could start off. Everybody that's supposed to be here is here, so I think you probably all have the agenda in front of you. The first item. Oh, wait a minute, where's Doug?
He's not here yet.
Doug is. First item on our agenda is the transfer station planning, and I know Doug had requested that we put that on the agenda today, so would be nice if he was here.
I have a question regarding the transfer station permits. Are you going to be talking about that at all?
Well, that's one of the items, yeah, but not really the thrust of what we wanted to talk about today. Today is more regarding future transfer station. What are we going to do? Are we outgrowing what we have? You know, we had plans a number of years ago. Well, when we were designing and building this building, at that time we had looked at the new transfer station, to the east of this facility. But due to cost considerations and other events, we decided to bag it at that time. So
that's correct.
Now it's kind of back on the radar again. So yeah, Caitlin has pulled up the original design that we had, entering off 5 and 20, that would keep everything on that site and away from the highway department complex here. And I think it would be, the design now would be somewhat different than this, that all those to the left side of that rendering, that whole area would not be required anymore, because we have stopped the allowing residents to take stone, sand, gravel, all that kind of stuff. So the only thing we would have available to the public is the mulch that we grind up from all the yard waste that we collect. So we might include that in the future, but the design itself is ultimately would probably be similar to this, but at this point we don't know what it would look like. Doug wanted to get us thinking about it again. As the clock is ticking on the whole process the county has with Casella, and how are we going to handle waste going forward? So I don't know.
Which I think would help.
Has there been discussions about regional facilities or?
Well, that's one of the topics. That's why people from the county are here with us today. So
I was going to say, is that why Carla, do you know, were you asked here by Doug specifically?
Actually, Caitlin asked Regina and I just to give an update on where we're at the county level.
Right.
But we're happy to wait if Doug is going to be joining late.
Hey, Terry, do we know if Doug's coming? Maybe we ought to defer this to the end of the session, because what he has to say may be pretty key, I think.
Well, it's we're trying to get in touch with him now, so I guess we could go ahead and start. Let's just follow the order we have on our agenda. Doug will chime in when he can chime in, I guess.
This meeting is being recorded, so we can always go back and review what Carla has to share with us.
Well, let's jump in, and just so you know who everybody is, I'm Terry Fennelly. I'm on the town board, and I'm chairman of the Planning and Public Works Committee. And this
Greg Hoteling, MRB Group, town engineer. Jim Fletcher.
Al Kraus, I'm with the planning committee.
Buck Euler with the planning board.
I'm Jean Chrisman. I'm the town clerk.
Carla, you know me.
Gary Davis, a member of the town board and chairman of the ordinance committee.
Eric Cooper, current town planner.
Okay, I guess that's everybody.
Great.
We have guests from the county. Why don't we let them go first? I gave a little preamble of what we've been thinking in the past, but that's all subject to change.
Sure. Well, good morning. My name is Carla Jordan. I think I've met quite a few of you. I am the director of the county's Department of Sustainability and Solid Waste. I'm joined here today by Regina Souza. She's a senior planner in our office as well. And I appreciate being asked here to just give a brief update on where we are at the county level regarding solid waste activities. As you mentioned, we're all very well aware of the fact that the current agreement with Casella will be expiring in 2028, and that we need to plan for what our county looks like, whether it be a no landfill county, whether it be in Ontario County, a no landfill county, whether it's an Ontario County waste only landfill or whatever it looks like. We need to start planning for that today because planning takes a lot of time, as you're aware. So one of the first things that we did was we hired a firm, SCS Engineers, to do a transfer station consolidation and program analysis study for us. And we asked them to do that basically because to date in Ontario County, these types of efforts have been entirely left up to the municipalities. So there is a very wide range of services that are available to our constituents throughout the county. And through the development of our department and working on our strategic plan, one of the things that came up was that really Ontario County residents should have access to the same level of service no matter where they live. So that's a little bit of a challenge when you have more populous municipalities, and then we go very rural too. So one of the things that we have talked about through this SCS study is coming up with a model that kind of is like a hub and spokes. And again, I should start this fully with a disclaimer that this study is still in draft form. It has not even been presented to our Planning and Environmental Quality Committee. So this is, I'm sharing with you some information that's in draft form, and I can't say for sure that our committee or board of supervisors is going to approve this, but this is what the general thought is to date. This hub and spoke model. Right now we have 14 municipalities that have various levels of transfer station services. Some municipalities only collect yard waste. And then we have some that I would refer to more as like Cadillac facilities, which would be like Victor and Canandaigua, where you guys provide a really large range of services to the residents that live in those towns. So one of the things that we're doing too is developing a strategic plan. And I'm going to try, there's so many plans going around. I'm going to try my best not to confuse anyone, but the strategic plan, which the full board of supervisors will see in January and would adopt, outlines the priorities of the department and getting us prepared for that 2028 date. And as drafted right now, the strategic plan talks about looking at these municipal transfer stations and seeing if we can make them, I don't want to say regional, although maybe that's a good term. Instead of having these 14 facilities, we would basically have 6 to 8 host facilities where we would help develop transfer stations in these municipalities that would be set up in a way so that anyone from any municipality could use them. And the reason we would set them up like that, and one of the primary goals would be to implement pay-as-you-throw infrastructure. So I know some people get very riled up at that thought. And I was talking to Caitlin about this yesterday. I anticipate that this will be a really big challenge in Canandaigua, where we know that residents can basically come and throw as much municipal solid waste away as they want, and they're not paying a fee for it at that point of transaction. They pay for it in their taxes, but that's kind of something that they're not seeing every time they pull up to the transfer station and throw bags away. So what we would do is the primary thought is if you've been to either the Town of Manchester facility or the Village of Phelps facility where the pay-as-you-throw infrastructure is automated. It basically has where if I was going to use this facility, I would have like a debit card that's loaded with money, and I would bring my rubbish. I would put my bag in there. It would weigh how much it is, and it would deduct it from my account. And there are various ways you can set up the transfer station so that you can also continue to accept bulky material, but it would be weighed and the person would pay on a per pound basis. The idea and the thrust behind these initiatives are to get people to divert as much as possible. So we would certainly still want to see at these facilities transfer stations where we had organics collected and we had yard waste collected and we had recycling collected. So we're giving residents the opportunities to divert everything they can before they put that bag on the scale and pay for what's left. The reason that we're looking for the pay-as-you-throw infrastructure other than that waste diversion is because if we set up these more regional type facilities where anyone could use them, so where, for example, if it was the town of Canandaigua, you might see people from Bristol, you might see people from the city of Canandaigua, you might see people from Hopewell who are driving through. We would want the facility to be user fee supported so that it doesn't become something that you would have to worry that the town of Canandaigua residents were upset that they're subsidizing something that everybody's using. It would be paid for by the people who use it. And that's the model that's been set up like in the town of Manchester. And so I will tell you that the study does recommend that the town of Canandaigua be one of these spoke facilities, simply based on the fact that you already have a pretty robust program. You have property, you already have a shared relationship with adjacent municipality, and your central location. So the town of Canandaigua is a desirable site to implement or to try something like this. What the strategic plan or what we've talked about in the strategic plan development, and again, I have to say that the full committee and the full board has not signed off on this, but the supervisors that were part of the strategic plan development agree that if we're going to move forward with something like this and ask the town of Canandaigua to be a host facility, that the county would do something to pay for the initial infrastructure or the development of that site. And so, as you may or may not know, we receive lease revenue from Casella through our landfill lease agreement. And a fair amount of that money actually goes into a reserve that our department will use over the coming years to develop infrastructure and programs so that when that landfill closes, we're not all running around wondering what to do. Our hope and our goal is that we have our infrastructure in place and we have our residents educated so that that just kind of becomes a blip on our radar. And so right now that reserve has right around $1 million in it. And we expect that to grow over the next 7 years. So in this type of situation, what we would do, or what the idea would be, is that if the town was a willing host for this type of transfer station, the county would assist or leverage our landfill money to obtain DEC grant funding to do the design and construction work relative to this type of facility. So what I was saying to Caitlin yesterday is it would be quite a bit more for the town of Canandaigua, given the fact that you're basically looking to develop a vacant piece of property right now. But certainly in this instance, if approved by the committee and the board, what we would do is come in and pay for that design work and the infrastructure and basically get it set up so that it could be user supported moving forward. This obviously sounds really good in theory, but what I've talked to Caitlin about yesterday too is In January, what the plan is we're going to get together the municipalities that have these transfer stations and that would be affected by this. And we're going to ask them to have a series of stakeholder meetings with us. So Supervisor Menacot's, Jim, whoever else is interested, we would ask to come to that meeting and kind of talk about this, because we also realize that transfer stations are surprisingly sacred to a lot of people, and it becomes something they do on the weekend. People like to see their neighbors there. They like the convenience of it. And so we understand that for what it is, it becomes a very political thing. And so we want to be able to make sure that we're working through this in the best interest of all of our residents, and making sure that we're providing them with the services that they're going to need post 2028. So we expect that those stakeholder meetings will start in January. And again, this is a small piece of what we're doing through the department. I think a bigger chunk is going to be implementing pay as you throw through our haulers, because about 80% of the waste that goes to our landfill generated by Ontario County residents is hauled there by third-party haulers. So it doesn't go through facilities like this. But pay as you throw is going to be something that all of our residents are going to be experiencing in the coming years. And I guess finally, I just want to say that this is not the county mandating anything. These are your facilities. These are our municipalities' facilities. And so certainly at this point, all we're doing is making a suggestion and trying to figure out how we can assist in a type of transition that we think will be functional post 2028.
Carla, what was your other example beside Manchester, who already has pay-as-you-go?
The Village of Phelps.
Phelps.
Village of Phelps has a facility. It's the exact same technical components as Manchester. That's what Manchester based theirs off of, and it's utilized by town residents as well. Town of Phelps.
Is there any kind of, in this study that was done, Carla, is there any kind of, other than 2028 out there, any other proposed timeline or steps that would be followed in getting to that point?
Right, so that is going to be more in line with our strategic plan, which we're hoping the full board will see January, late January, early February, based on the organizational committee or the organizational meeting. And that strategic plan develops our department's priorities with preparing for 2028 and beyond. And so the transfer stations is kind of I don't want to say it's a low-hanging fruit, but we know it's something that a lot of towns are thinking about right now, especially going through COVID. There's a lot of towns that are kind of subsidizing that operation. We have quite a few towns that just have a hauler come up and people throw garbage in there. So it's something a lot of people are thinking about right now and that we've gotten calls on. And so that's one of the things that we're going to kind of hit the ground running with after the adoption of the strategic plan, is to work through the transfer stations with our municipalities. There's also a focus on adopting a local law. Right now we have several local laws relative to recycling in Ontario County, and none of them are really enforceable. They reference departments and people that don't exist. And so one of the things the strategic plan highlights as well is developing a local law that is actually enforceable. And the enforcement is going to be a big piece of that, is how we work with, whether we have a part-time sheriff's deputy to go after illegal dumping and whatever, that's something that we have to look through. We've also talked about the haulers. That's a big piece. We have to figure out how we can implement pay as you throw or do something with our haulers to not only help educate our residents, but reduce volume that people are throwing out at the curb that goes to the landfill. In terms of the transfer station timeline specifically, what I was telling Caitlin yesterday is that what I would foresee is that we would have these stakeholder meetings the early part of the year, and then we would start to see where everybody falls out. this idea only makes a ton of sense if we get the majority of the municipalities on board with it. And in theory, when we started discussions, we had a lot of municipalities that were kind of okay with the idea of maybe losing a transfer station if it meant that their constituents were going to be able to have access to more services. So they'd be able to get rid of organics or batteries or plastic films or whatever it was. Now I think just in preliminary discussions with some people that might get pushed back a little bit. So we're trying to develop a brand in terms of educational objectives too, so that even if it's not our facility, people understand, they recognize the signage, they recognize the guidance, and they trust that it's accurate and consistent. And right now, all of our municipalities are doing a ton of different things, and their residents believe different things, and it's all going to the same facility. So we're trying to eliminate some of the confusion and the conflict in messaging through part of this effort too. But the idea would be to meet with those stakeholders in 2021 and perhaps even start design for some of the facilities so that we could get construction underway in 2022. Again, subject to the full board's approval of our strategic plan in this process and use of the reserve money for these efforts.
What is Plan B?
Facility be county operated then? Do you envision that, or?
No, so I don't expect that they would be county operated. And that's why I think that's another important reason to have these stakeholder meetings, to flush out some of the details. So I can think of something idealistically, our engineers can think of something idealistically, but when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of how things operate, we need to have those discussions with some of our highway superintendents, with our supervisors. One of the things we've talked about too is if we got everybody on board, would we bid out like the actual hauling from the facilities, so our towns wouldn't have to maintain roll-off equipment or transfer equipment anymore, or compactors. Basically, the county would bid out for the facility so we could get the economy of scale for our towns. And then, you know, the towns wouldn't have to worry about that type of thing. They would be on a schedule, and you would have someone like Waste Management or Casella or someone come through and drop new compactors and pull the other ones or pull the roll-offs. And, you know, the town would essentially not have to worry about that type of thing. So these stakeholder meetings are important because we would want to know what priorities the town has regarding that. I know I get a ton of calls from the towns just relative to like purchasing containers and the expense related to that, and repairing containers and repairing compactors and getting enough staff to work these types of facilities. So through discussions, we're hoping to find whether or not that's something that these host towns might be interested in, whether they would want it entirely staffed by someone else, whether they would want their staff there, but they don't want to have to worry about the hauling anymore, whether they want control over all of it. That's stuff that we would have to work through and figure out.
Yeah.
This is a twist I didn't think about. So you're basically looking at the town giving you space, and then you're going to engineer and design and set this up and operate it?
So not necessarily, not operate it. We're not going to operate it with county staff. But one of the potential things that we could look at if the towns were interested is bidding out operations of the facilities. So there would still be a cost to operate the facility, but the user fees would support that cost. So the people using the facility and what they pay for it would cover the cost of having, you know, the employees there and pulling the containers and getting it disposed of.
Does this study also include some education component for the various communities in the county? And
yes, so there's a big educational one. Out of the part of the strategic plan too also recommends hiring a full-time educator, Right now, we do a variety of education, whether it's Regina, myself, another woman in our department. We do a lot of tabling events. We do community organizations and groups like the Rotary. And then the landfill does a lot of tours as well. And something that's always kind of felt off to me is the fact that the landfill does these tours, and they probably do more tours than anybody. But the people who go to the landfill site just learn about the landfill, and they don't know about our strategic plan, or why, like all these other things we're doing, our local solid management plan, our efforts to reduce waste that's generated in the county. So it's certainly a priority is to have a full-time educator and set up programs in our school districts, and more consistent outreach to our community groups to help with these efforts.
There is another component I know to our facility here, and that is the, you referenced it earlier somewhat, and that is the social component.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that cannot be overlooked.
Yep. No, I don't disagree with you. And so I think it's going to be a tough sell, like I said, for Canandaigua, you would, like I said, the study recommends that you would continue to operate a facility or have a facility. It's more of a tough sell for like some of our rural facilities that right now don't get a lot of traffic. We have one municipality that only has about like 60 users. To be the entire town is subsidizing that for 60 users. So it's going to be
I don't know if you saw it. Jean Chrisman had a question. Her microphone isn't working. She wanted to know if there's a plan B, a strategic plan.
So a plan B for relative to the transfer stations. I don't, there isn't, not right now. I think the initial plan relative to the transfer stations is first and foremost to get consistent education and outreach to our transfer stations. And so one of the things we've noticed in this process too is that, Jim and Caitlin, you guys might think that you have to do something a certain way for recycling or whatever at your transfer station. And then I will go to Hopewell and talk to them, and they'll say like, well, we tell people they can't get rid of that. And it's like, well, you can. So there's a ton of misconceptions at our facility, at the municipal transfer stations, and they're all using the same facility. So that's something we noticed right off the bat was the county is well poised in a position to get our municipalities accurate and up-to-date information on what can be accepted at these facilities, how they should be handled, and educational information for your residents. So that's something we're going to take an active role in the coming year is at a minimum, regardless of any future changes to the transfer stations, we want to provide our transfer stations with consistent signage, educational materials, so that all of the users of the facilities understand how things have to be done. And like I said, we're poised in a position to, as things change, as markets change, as information change, to have us disseminate that information out to our municipalities, because we're going to hear that directly from Casella. And it's important to us to make sure our municipalities are all on the same page with consistent messaging to our residents. Otherwise, it doesn't make a lot of sense for us to have the effort we have in our recycling website with information if it conflicts with information that our residents might be getting at a municipal level. And so that's one of our efforts, is at a minimum to get consistent messaging and signage and information out to the transfer stations as they exist today. So that is one of the first steps we're going to do. The second steps would be to implement pay-as-you-throw infrastructure. There hasn't been a lot of discussion about a plan B, mainly because, as I mentioned at the beginning, there's not a ton of waste that goes through these municipal transfer stations. When you look at Ontario County as a whole, we produce about 120,000 tons of municipal solid waste a year. And it's like 15 to 20% of it flows through municipal transfer stations. And so we want to make an effort in trying to give our residents the opportunity to divert as much as they can at these facilities and think about what they're generating and pay as you throw. And this is one way that we think we can do that. I don't know how much other effort or expense we would put into these facilities, knowing the volume that we're talking about, if that makes sense.
Well, when you get more information, I think we currently pay a much lesser fee for tipping at the landfill currently. Does anyone have an idea what's going to cost in 7 years? That might change the minds of municipalities when it comes to disposing trash.
Right. So that's one of the things we've talked about too. And one of the things we're going to have to look at in the coming year as we talk about the probably in 2022, I think there's going to have to be a policy made by the Board of Supervisors relative to whether or not we continue to operate a landfill at any scale. We did do a survey relative to solid waste in Ontario County in the spring. And surprisingly, we had a lot of people who said that they would support a landfill that was for Ontario County waste only. So really their issue with the landfill today is that the scale of it, they're not supportive of the size of the facility. And so, you know, what that looks like, we have to figure out, because you're absolutely right, Jim. When we lose our own facility, it's really hard to think of it as an asset, but it is an asset in terms that we own something that we know our waste can go to. And when you have to start exporting things, you start relying on other communities. And when that facility closes, we will certainly see a ripple effect, because we'll have one less landfill in the area, which means there's going to be up to 3,000 tons a day that have to go somewhere else, which means that the other landfills in the area are going to be able to be more picky or choosy about what waste they're accepting and the cost of such. Additionally, Seneca Meadows is slated to close in 2025. So if that actually occurs, then you're talking about between 2025 and 2028, 9,000 tons a day of waste that need to find a home somewhere. And that's why it's so important to work on our reduction efforts. Like I said, our piece of that is about 100,000 tons a year, 120,000 tons as a county. So that's what we need to think about. You're right that it's going to cost more to go somewhere else. And so part of this hub and spoke model too also asks for talks about the consideration of, do we have a more commercial scale transfer somewhere in the facility or in the county? It would probably make sense at the landfill site, where we would have municipalities. We would help buffer that burden of additional cost by, instead of the town of Canandaigua having to haul to Parrington or Riga or whatever facility is open, you could come and transfer at the landfill site, which would now just be a transfer station, and that would be consolidated and hauled somewhere else. So that's something we're looking at too, as potential cost measures, saving measures for our municipalities. But if you get into the idea where we're potentially bidding out those operations too, there might be there's more economy of scale with that type of thing, so it might not be as big of an issue. But certainly in the next year or so, as we look towards providing the information to the board so that they can make a policy decision relative to the landfill, we'll have more specifics about what the cost for future waste handling is going to be. But you're absolutely right to suspect that it will be more. much
Hey,
more.
Carla, do you have any feel for what percentage of the county solid waste is really handled by commercial pickup at your house trash carriers versus our public facilities? And what do you think the viability of just throwing it out there? Everybody, is it better for everybody to go commercial and do it that way? Or do you environmentally or recycling, do you think it's better to have kind of a mix, public facility versus the commercial services?
Yeah, so it's about 80% of waste in our county is handled through private haulers. 80 to 85% is picked up at the curb. So it's a significant amount. I do see value in the municipal transfer stations, even in the future, just because there will not always be a hauler that will be able to pick up everything we want people to divert at the curb. So as of right now, there's no hauler that services the entire county that would pick up organics at the curb. And there's not someone who would pick up paint at the curb or batteries at the curb. And so we want to make sure we're encouraging our residents to appropriately handle everything that they can divert. So we're only throwing away absolutely what needs to be thrown away. So I think that the transfer stations hold an important role in that. And additionally, a big thing that I did not mention as part of the hub and spoke model, our committee has always felt very strongly about creating something like an eco park, like Monroe County's eco park, where our residents would be able to take paint or electronics or batteries, those types of materials at any time. So instead of having to wait 2 years for a household hazardous waste event, they'd be able to go every Saturday or every other Saturday or whatever that looks like. So part of this hub and spoke model would be trying to figure out what people will drive for. If we only have one facility, if it's on county property, it's likely going to be in the town of Seneca at the landfill site. So if the old MRF there becomes an eco park, let's say, is someone from Canandaigua willing to drive to that facility to get rid of paint or batteries anytime they want, knowing that they might lose the opportunity to do it at their transfer station, their local transfer station. So trying to figure out what this looks like so we can manage what should be a service offered at the transfer stations versus what's at a more central location, what should we be doing in events. And obviously we in SCS has come up with a recommendation, but we definitely need our municipal input on that. And so as we present this to the committee in the coming months and work on getting these stakeholder groups together, we'll be able to refine that a little more, because if you can appreciate that for Canandaigua, it's going to seem a little bit different because you guys are already offer such a high level of service. But when you're talking about municipalities like Bristol, where you get municipal waste and recycling, or the city of Geneva, where you can get rid of yard waste and that's it. This is going to be more of an adjustment. We're talking about trying to level the field in terms of providing adequate access so that people are doing the right things, so that we don't see TVs thrown away on the side of the road. We're trying to figure out how we can provide equal and adequate access throughout the county.
Well, something like food waste is a good example because nobody's going to travel to Geneva to get rid of food waste. So if you want something like that and continue that, you're going to have to do it more locally, reasonably local.
Yeah, so organics is something that I see in the same vein as municipal solid waste. It's something that people generate every day in their home, and they're going to have to be able to get rid of more conveniently. And I think food waste is something that, like, legislatively, we know for our commercial businesses, they're going to have to start adapting to that in the coming year. So right now there is no food waste ban on residents. It's the way the legislation is trending right now is we're seeing a push legislatively to keep organics out of the landfill. And so we need to be able to be ahead of it for our residents so that we're not trying to figure out how to play catch up and where this stuff is going to go. I don't know if any of this has been helpful.
Oh, yeah, very
Oh,
helpful.
very helpful, very helpful. Yeah, yeah. We've been wondering, I mean, we hear bits and pieces occasionally, you know, and occasionally there's something in the paper that these issues are being looked at, but, you know, your presentation today is extremely helpful. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate your guys' involvement in these issues. I know Regina and I always are super happy that the town of Canandaigua was so active in these areas, and certainly we'll be looking, talk to Caitlin to see how we can partner as we kind of roll some of this stuff out. I think that you guys are in a great position to kind of help us work through some of these things and some of these issues, whether it be education or signage, and working through these types of programs so that we're all squared away in 2028 and in a really good spot.
Hey, Terry, recommend we try to set up a site visit to Phelps and Manchester to see how they're doing that throw as you go, so we can talk about it in January, maybe.
Well, there's, from what Carl is saying, there'll be some stakeholder meetings scheduled perhaps in January. So maybe at that time we could look at some activities like that. So
I know some of us have gone to Manchester. I think, Jim, you were there, Doug was there. Caitlin, I think you were there as well. Yeah, I'm sure that they they'll let you go anytime. They were very hospitable and explaining everything to us too. So I would recommend going out there. It would be a big change. And Carla, I know on the county level, we do a lot of things by committees, but if you or the committee can keep us updated, because when we get this, if we get this has been helpful to me too. You and I speak frequently, and I kind of know where things are going, but it's helpful to me to then report back to the town along the way, because sometimes the way we do it in the county, all of a sudden we get it on our laps and it's not necessarily enough time to then go back and explain everything to the towns, that then they can come back with questions. So thank you for being here, because it's cuts away a step when I would come back and then ask questions and then go back. So if you could, and I know you will, but make yourself available for these things, it would be very helpful and cut out a step or 3 steps as the case may be. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to participate whenever the town needs me around, even if it's just to sit and kind of listen to what you guys are thinking or provide feedback. I'm happy to be involved. And as I said, this still needs to be rolled out to the full committee, and then recognizing kind of the, sometimes it's mind-boggling to me that solid waste is like this big of an issue to towns and cities and villages when you think about all the stuff that you all have going on, but it is a really big issue. It's a big issue for our county. And so that's why with the strategic plan, Supervisor Menacott, you can expect there's going to be like a workshop or a full board retreat relative to the strategic plan and walking through all this stuff, because as I said, everything I've said today is kind of theory and stuff we've been thinking about, and some supervisors have been involved in that, but certainly we're going to need the full board support for some of these efforts, as when you talk about, implementing pay as you throw or having a local law that would require our haulers to do it to operate in our county, like those are big things. They're big things, and we're going to need support, because there is inevitably going to be some growing pains, but we need to move. We need to make sure we're equipping our residents to be successful and have the things that they need as we move forward.
I know one of the current concerns with the pay as you throw when we were out at the facility was, in the town, we have tremendous traffic flow going through there. And even Manchester was saying they have some Saturdays when, the traffic is backed up on County Route 7 or whatever it is out there. So that, and then if we're going to be having, neighboring towns, that I think is a big concern initially, my concern. But, if we're having planning and, the county's involved, I'm sure all those things will be looked into. But when I was out there, I could see how it could easily get backed up. If you're weighing, every bag, and we're used to constituents who just come and basically, like
Yeah.
you said, it's a social event and getting rid of your garbage. It's going to be a big mindset change.
Right. And I think as we work through that, certainly Canandaigua and Victor have some of the more robust programs, and they also have some of the higher volume of residents who participate in those. So certainly we would work through that at the design stage where, maybe it's something where we need 3 of those specific way stations so that we're, instead of just the one where one person goes at a time, we need to figure out what the through traffic is and what we would need to keep everybody moving safely. And so certainly that would be a consideration as we move forward.
Okay, any other questions from anybody on the screen? If not, thank you for the presentation, and 3 of you have very nice looking Christmas trees behind you, so thank you.
Thank you. And as always,
The whole thing. So.
Feel free to let me know if you have any questions. We're happy to pop back whenever you need us.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Carl. Thank you, Regina.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. Moving on from the transfer station to,
Terry,
yeah,
I have a question. I've heard rumors about people are required to get their hanging tag by the end of this year. Is that true? And I guess what's the ramifications if people don't? I was just wondering about that.
Well, we would like them to get by the end of the year, but there's nothing that says there's no enforcement that they did or didn't have one, what we're gonna do out there, Gene. So
Okay.
I've got the message board saying, telling people to look for their tag, they should have one to see if it's expired, but I don't believe there's anything in town code or policy that says you must do this or that, or we're not gonna take your trash because we don't have enough people to police
Okay.
the
All
situation.
right. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
The message board does seem to be working. I got 3 calls about permits this week. Jean, you probably got a couple of emails. People were wondering if they can do it, without coming into town hall. So it seems to be helping because I got a lot of calls about permits.
Yeah, we've issued quite a few actually. Totally, we've issued 1,400 hanging tags already. There are still 477 stickers, people with stickers without the tags. So total, we're around almost 1,900 permits and tags for the year. So I don't know how we can increase that because I think in the past we've been closer to like 2,500.
Right.
yeah.
But I just didn't know.
Well, I think we just have to keep pushing it and with the sign out there. It's very difficult to, put some kind of mandate out there if you're not allowed in if you don't have the orange tag. But we just have to keep encouraging it. I don't, they have somebody out there saying you can't come in because you don't have the tag, but you got a sticker in your car. Well, that'd be very difficult to enforce. I think it would probably be even worse than when you guys were out there a couple months ago trying to, get people to, sign up for the, orange hanging tag. We just have to keep pushing it. I think unless somebody's got a better idea that.
That's fine. Caitlin's right. We've gotten some emails this week. We've had people do straggle in to get their permits. So people are getting them. I didn't know if you wanted us to mail. I mean, that's a big chunk of change though. Those other 400, almost 500 people, the hanging tags. I mean, it's just, but maybe that's something we need to think about in coming years for the for the 2022-23. I know we talked about in the past about charging $1 for the placard or something like that. But I mean, I'm still getting people who come in with stickers from 2014, 15. So it's, they are coming in slowly, but I just wanted to give you guys an update. And I also wanted a clarification about something I must have misheard, which is good.
Yeah, we appreciate the comments. So it's, you know, it's just getting them to do it, you know, and
Right.
you know, the guys out there asking them to do it, they're frequently very busy and they're running constantly to, you know, try to keep the traffic moving. And it's a frustrating situation, really.
Right. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much.
Hey, Gene,
Thanks, Dean.
well, let's move on to the camp plan review, transportation goals. That Eric had asked that we take a look at this section that's in the draft comprehensive plan that's been worked on for the past year and a half. So hopefully everybody's had a chance to review this and offer some thoughts. So I just open it up for whatever comments anyone has.
Let me just start by saying the comments that are in here, or the measurables and the action items, were the result of the various meetings kind of throughout the earlier portion of the year. I did not take it upon myself when I was taking those comments from the meetings to, I mean, I edited them wording wise, but I didn't take any out because I didn't want to be kind of the judge of whether or not it was feasible. This was input received from the public, and so I wanted to put it in here and leave it to both you guys as a responsible committee and the CIC for and the town board eventually, you know, to make sure whether or not it was appropriate. So if there's things in here that you guys see that are meaningless or that are, you know, not palatable, you know, we can get rid of them. It's not, nobody's particularly tied to them, but you are the people who I wanted to kind of edit that stuff out so that it wasn't kind of me doing it.
One of the questions I would have on these measurables is what, I mean, some to me, yeah, it makes sense, some don't, but what will be done with them? I mean, how do they, CIC, I guess, would use that data to help achieve some, you know, the goal that, you know, that's contained in the vision statement up above, or
It's essentially to say, you know, if this is our goal, how do we track our achievement in that goal? So, you know, part of the goal relates to like multimodal accommodations, right? So the ability to walk places, bike places, you might measure that based on the amount of sidewalk and bike lanes, right? And part of that also relates back to the action steps. Say you take some actions and, you know, you do those hopefully to get to the goal. 10 years down the road or whenever you choose to revise the comprehensive plan, you look to the measurables and you say, oh, well, like it really didn't change anything. So those action steps weren't particularly productive. So that's kind of where the measurables come in and hopefully be useful for, you know, review in the future when we look back to say, how successful were we to accomplishing this goal?
I guess what you have in mind for electrical vehicles, you're talking about trying to get these charging stations at various facilities within the town to hold them, because the town itself doesn't have a lot of facilities where you would put these things. So how do you look at that?
So again, the measurables and actions were the result of, or the input from public meetings. So I'm not the one that necessarily put that in there, but I'll try to figure that out for you here. I would think that it's just a very simple measurement of, you know, your ability to accommodate electric vehicles. I think that you're right. There's not really spaces or not a ton of spaces for the public or that are publicly owned for people to charge, except maybe, you know, at parks potentially. Like if you were spending hours at Oneida Park, maybe you could charge there, or any of the other park spaces. But it's not as though you commonly might see plug-in stations at like a mall or a shopping area. So while you're shopping, your car charges. There's really not town infrastructure near shopping spaces so much. So I would think that that's maybe what they had in mind, or they really didn't say where it was supposed to be. Maybe they wanted the town to support plug-in stations on private spaces. You know, maybe it's like during the planning board process, the planning board says support, you know, electric vehicles in some fashion. I would think that that would still count, you know, towards the goal that the infrastructure is within the town, and certainly if the planning board helped achieve that.
Well, a comprehensive plan is really a guidance document for determining codes and determining direction for the town. I have a problem seeing the town be involved in selling electricity. You know, to have a plug-in station located here, should we acquire electric vehicles in the future, makes sense, but to offer that as a service to the public, I think then you're competing against some private enterprise, or you're, then of course, you know, you have to maintain anything that you develop. I just, I know you collected, I went to a number of those meetings that you had, Eric, and you collected all the thoughts that came out of everybody that attended. And, you know, that this is where the list comes from, and all the measurables and the action steps. So I just question that when I get. Also, I was wondering, what's the annual average daily traffic? Is that a measurement that we currently
You get from the county,
use from the county?
if I ask them to do it.
So that's already been done, or being done by the county, or?
Well, yeah, in targeted locations. So,
Yeah,
like
it's-
it's when he does.
Oh, for
Yeah, but it's basically a little mini traffic signals when they put the little strips across the road.
all right,
But it's not something we do every year.
Well, just to beat this around a little more on the electric vehicles, there is a big push on all the car manufacturers now to get more electric vehicles. What is the viability? What's the feasibility of the town passing some kind of thing that says, okay, if you create a grocery store, for example, that you have to provide so many electric charging stations? What is even the viability of doing that?
I'm not sure. You know, it would be kind of similar to like our parking requirements or something. If you have, like for handicap parking, if you have 20 spaces, 5 or 10%, I can't remember what we changed it to, have to be handicap parking. You know, I guess the rule would be written some similar to that. I don't really know how legal it would be. Certainly the ADA is legal, but I don't know, requiring them to provide infrastructure for certain types of vehicles. I mean, it's not like protected class of vehicles, I don't think. Maybe Greg knows more about that.
I think, you know, also, if I could just jump in there a quick second, I think some of the measurables relating to this would be met through some of the stuff we're looking to do through parks also. You know, there's grant money available for these electric vehicle charging stations at certain parks and those types of things. The state program, I know, has even told us that they're interested in a facility in the area of Cheshire. So we had a conversation maybe about Pierce Park. I know that we're talking about that for the new inclusive playground as another thing. So some of those things might be able to be met through parks.
Yeah, I think Doug's kind of hitting at it. Like if you can locate a few of these charging stations strategically, I think the commercial side will kind of work itself out as electrical vehicles become more utilized. Then commercial retailers are going to want to provide that service so those drivers can utilize their store.
I would let them take care of it rather than the town. Yeah, we're gonna send the idea behind this, and we would send somebody out to count those throughout the town. And then do what with that data?
There's actually metrics that the Ontario County Clerk's Office keeps in terms of the number of registered electric vehicles. I've actually asked for that data specifically as we start to explore this, but what I was told is there's over 1,000 currently registered in Ontario County, and it continues to grow. And we'll want to look at specific data relative to the town of Canandaigua, obviously, and the greater Canandaigua community.
So would this measurable, if we choose to leave it in here, more appropriately be the number of electric vehicles in the town? And even though I think that may be like where the vehicles go might be more appropriate for parks or something, I think that, electric vehicles fit better within the transportation goal section.
I think we're at the tipping point, so I kind of question that one, but I recommend we just kind of leave it the way it is. And it's certainly a thought provoker. And I think we're kind of at the tipping point on this electrical stuff.
Well, I just don't want to get into a situation where with these measurables, that somebody is required to track this stuff, and it goes in a file, it goes on a shelf, and it's never looked at. What is this information going to be used to do? I mean, how is this going to help our town move forward? Somebody's going to have to be responsible for accumulating this data. I don't know who that is. I don't know who they give the information to and how it's going to be used to, help the town achieve, what's in our comprehensive plan. I mean, what we have in here ought to be stuff that helps us, move forward, not just collect some information and let it sit there. So, I mean, I can tend to leave them all in there if you want to, but somebody's going to have to do this stuff.
A lot of this stuff, the measurables, are in the comprehensive plan today. I don't think we have any plug-in stations in the town, but and I don't think I mapped the miles of trail and sidewalk, but I think I did, maybe just at least show them. But a lot of the other stuff is in there today. We do use that information. And essentially when we're updating the comp plan, we probably will do so again. So it's not necessarily extra information that has to be collected. It may be beneficial to look at it in between now and when the comp plan is updated in 5 to 10 years.
Who is it collecting this information now, Eric?
Well, I did.
Oh, you do?
Well, partly. I mean, Jim helped me with the AADT and RTS I got from RTS. Walk and bike scores are available online. And then accidents can come from the state.
So these things are all stuff that's occurring right now.
Yeah, I mean, preferably try to get measurables from existing data sources.
So we wouldn't be adding any extra burden to anybody, leaving all these recommendations in here.
There'd certainly be some burden in collecting it. It wasn't necessarily timeless for me to find it all. And, I had to ask Jim a lot for the different traffic data for the roads and whatnot. And, the county had to go out and measure it, but it wasn't like it was all created in-house.
Well, what's the verdict? Just leave it as it is then, or recommend that it stays this way, or what? It's a consensus.
I recommend leave it as it is.
I think that it's important.
All right.
I think that's not to say that each of these measurables is necessarily good, but the measurables generally are good to be in there.
Okay. Well, let's leave it alone then. We're going to talk about the action steps. And they're up there on the screen now. what's the feeling with these? I know Doug has gone through and given us his thoughts on the responsible entities at least, and the primary and secondary group person or group or department that, you know, should be, have the responsibility for these. I don't know how many people have seen that. I know he sent it out to the town board, but just looking at the recommended action steps and, you know, assigning some relative importance to them, is something that Eric had asked us to look at also.
You know, I get back to Eric, like the first two, we don't control the speed. There's a handful of signs that are allowed on a road. You just can't make up a sign and go to try and tell people because it doesn't fit in the MUTCO guidelines. So I'm not sure how either one of those are going to help us.
Is there, well, when, actually, no, Terry, you were there, Jim, I don't think you were, Gary, I think you were there, but when we went out to Stryker's Farm, that was one of the things that they had raised to us, I think it was Mark, you know, that they were worried about collisions essentially between speeding cars and farm vehicles. What can be done to, whether it's just allaying the fears or making it safer for them?
It's honestly, again, we don't set the speed limits. That's done by the state DOT, does speed studies. You could put up a sign that pretty much everybody will ignore because they do anyways. It says there's a, you know, a farm nearby, but
Yeah, the yellow sign with the
yellow
tractor.
sign on the tractor, huh? That's it. You know,
Sometimes we keep up
Well,
short.
didn't we help out that situation when we put up the farm signs at most of the entrances, Jim, that you put up?
all it says is a right to farm while you enter town of Quebec. That's it.
Aren't there places where there are signs with showing the tractor?
Farm friendly community is what the sign says.
Oh, that, those green and white, yeah, I mean, aren't there some places in the town where
There's a tractor.
yeah,
Yeah, it's a yellow sign with the
I can't say a word now, but
I can tell you, no one gives a shit about it.
well, I know.
So, I mean, you know,
It's
being
different.
blunt, I mean, just, you know, people even are, I'll give you a perfect example. When we had the accident at 332 Airport Road, we set up a detour with arrows and cones. Probably 40, 50 cars will all go straight and not follow a detour, gets to the dead end, they have to turn around and come back because they didn't read the freaking sign. I mean, that people don't pay attention when they drive. That's when I close the road. They just don't get it.
The yellow tractor signs are no different than the yellow ear signs.
Yeah,
Which they stopped allowing those deer signs.
the deer signs are no longer in the MUTCO guidelines.
So they changed
So I think what Jim's concern is that those first two items are really items that fall under the DOT. We just don't have control over the types of signage or the speed limits on the road.
Okay. Can we make, let's say, like, eliminate the second one, because that really is specific to signage. But, you know, talking about farm vehicle safety, can we just make it more broad to, you know, leave it as a later date, not necessarily relating to signage or speed limits, because, you know, like you said, it's limited in the town's ability to do that, but leave it for future investigation as to how best to, you know, make it more safe for farm vehicles to use town roads.
Sure.
Well, it's like Jim said, you know, people don't pay attention because most of these farm vehicles already have some kind of signs on the back of their vehicles anyways.
You know, you're not supposed to pass a vehicle a double stop line, but people do it because they don't want to wait. There's nothing we can do about that. The shoulder design, you know, I have worked on Sand Hill Road and North Road we made them a bit wider just because it helps get them over a little bit. But farm machinery does not have to drive on the side of a shoulder. There's nothing that said they have to. They have just as right to use a road as anyone was driving. So if they're driving down the lane of the road, that's perfectly legal.
Plus the farm equipment seems to get wider and wider.
Somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Well,
anyways, the next one there, technology improvements to improve safety.
well, wait a minute,
Okay.
what are we gonna do with these first two? I mean, they're action steps that somebody's gonna be expected to take if they're, listed in our comprehensive plan.
When it comes to roadway design, Terry, we can look at making sure that their approaches of our town roads are sized accordingly for them to swing in and out of, because their equipment is longer and bigger instead of being to get in and out. We can look at areas that have narrow shoulders where the ditch is close. Maybe make it improvements there to allow them to move over a little bit so they feel safe when they're traveling with heavy equipment.
Well, maybe if you change it, to say, explore actions for rural farm road and roadway design, just eliminate that other part. I mean, that's what you're doing now.
Right.
You could leave it in that way.
Or just make it a general safety goal. And not
Right, I don't, at this point, I'm not even mentioning design necessarily, just saying, explore options for, farm vehicle safety on town roads or something like that. Something broad enough that, further research can dictate which way it ends up going.
Okay, all right.
But you actually put in there, it's like our transfer station, you can educate the people what the laws are for farm equipment, put something out there that's on our website.
Okay.
And then again, we'll just get rid of the second one. Jim, you were talking about the third one?
Yeah, what was the thought on technology improvements to improve safety?
Truthfully, I can't recall the
Okay.
meeting. I agree that what it I can't figure out what it was referring to, and
Okay, I just,
that's not clear. You might as well get rid of it.
yeah, I just didn't know.
Would that be LED traffic signals, things that are more visible so they can be seen by the motorist, the intensity of the sign screening, that they're more reflective and they show up more? Is that the kind of thing you might be thinking of there?
Could be. I mean,
All that covered by whatever this group is.
Yeah, the MUTCO governs that right now, like those rapid beacon flashes are now no longer allowed for, I don't know why, Chuck, but they pulled them out, so.
Yeah, that's one question I had for you, Jim. In terms of following the national and state guidelines regarding signage, screening, reflectivity. I know a lot of communities, it becomes very expensive because you got to go out and you got to change all the signs to a different sheeting material.
Right.
And is that something that's been a concern of yours, that you're getting these mandates or requirements, but you don't have the time and money to go and make these changes?
Chuck, going back like 6, maybe 7, maybe 8 years ago, there was a big push by the federal government to make all of our signs with this highly reflective material.
Yep.
Problem was is you can't afford it.
Yep.
So we as a state association push back and say, look, here's our plan. We'll do what can be afforded to do in a given budget year, but because they want them all done by say 2018, which isn't cost effective for many people.
I remember that.
But
Yes.
we're just going through them. We do so many a year, keep track of it, and if anyone questions it, that's what we're doing.
Okay. Very good.
Knowing that, Jim, I'm sure you're going to take advantage of technology improvements anyways, and it'll probably be required by law when it is deemed to be safe? Do you think this goal should, or this action step should be in there?
Yeah, maybe technology improvements isn't necessarily the right terminology, because
How about just improvements to, can be improvements to improve safety?
yeah, that sounds good.
Take advantage of. Yeah. Opportunities to improve safety. I'll work on it.
Okay. Move on to the next one, exploring bike sharing and or scooter share programs. Is that,
Again, this is something that came out of the meeting that my personal opinion is that it doesn't make sense in the town of Canandaigua. There's not really, it's more of an urbanized program.
want to access that?
I would suggest it, but I'll leave it up to you guys.
You're gonna have scooters on bike lanes. Yikes.
Better than the sidewalks.
Yeah, but boy, both are non-issues. Oh gosh. Yeah, I think that reference to, oh, you're going to take the whole thing out, so be it.
Yeah, we, just as a reminder, this has to end by noon, this meeting. And there are other topics, so we want to keep it moving.
Yep.
Completing construction in connection to Auburn Trail, that's something that we want to do and plan on doing, so that's good to leave in. I would
Thumbs
think.
up.
Seeking grant assistance to complete traffic studies and mitigation for dangerous roads and intersections. We do that. Review site design criteria and zoning codes, identify impediments to and promotion of alternative transportation. Oh, that's a easy one.
Would that be above and beyond complete streets, which we have already, or looking at
Say,
other
yeah.
options?
To me, that's its own, should be part of complete street. You're looking at trying to come up with alternative transportation.
Yeah, I mean, that's,
Already in the complete streets where it can be done.
Scooters on bikeways.
When Doug was looking at this and he gave his opinion on it, Chuck, he said the primary responsibility was the planning board, so that would be you.
Okay, move it over. Just pile it on, that's all.
Well, I mean, that's the kind of thing you guys look at.
It is, yeah, to be truthful, to be, yeah.
So I mean, leaving it in here would be appropriate, I would think. I mean, it's
Sure.
an ongoing type thing. It's not like you achieve that goal and you check it off and don't go back to it. I mean, it's going to be a recurring, continuous.
Ongoing.
So it probably belongs in here. Working with RTS and Ontario County and City of Canandaigua to improve the transit system. What are the thoughts on that?
That'll be probably a separate group to figure out where to place that stuff. Then come back to transportation, see what we got. Like,
Hey, sorry, I had to step away for a minute. This is Doug back. The only thing I would say about that is I think it's too specific. I think it should be something more along the lines of explore collaboration for public transportation or something or other like that, just to make it less specific as things change. Especially, the county, we don't control who the county is going to contract with for public transportation. So if RTS is it, great. If not, we could work with whoever. And I think entities like our local LDC, they could help along that lines too, with some of that kind of stuff.
Well, maybe Eric, that could be reworded to reflect, what Doug just mentioned.
yep.
That would
With
probably
that-
go- the next one was include
Yeah.
RTS early in the process, so they kind of go together.
transit
This was a comment specifically from Bonnie that like sometimes she felt like she got stuff when a project was already designed or whatever. And by that point, she felt she couldn't really change much up, especially with like her kind of, whether it was scheduling or pickups. It was a good comment.
I
but-
agree. Yeah, I
Eric-
agree with what Eric is saying, though. You know, that one, that Creekview Apartments is a good example of that one where RTS would have liked to have provided input in terms of the bus stops. When you're getting a large multifamily development project like that, that's probably going to be heavily reliant on public transportation. So I don't know how we incorporate that. Somewhere between the development office and the planning board, we've got to catch that.
how about we include them as a reviewing agency for plans that, you know, how we send it out to various agencies. Why don't we include RTS?
Good idea.
Definitely check to see if they'd actually respond though.
Well,
Since everything we're sending seems to be digital, it wouldn't mean sending a set of plans out to them. Just at least make them aware of the application and the plans are available for them to look at, and we would welcome their comments.
Yeah, and I think that they want to see it stuff like when it's in sketch plan phase, and also even like when we're doing our more general plans. Like obviously they work with us on Uptown, but you know, like a planning document like that, they want to be involved.
Well, at PRC, we can designate even sketch plans that go to RTS.
Yep.
yeah, that's good. All right, so those can be reworked, I guess, Eric, by you. And well, next, prepare best practices manual for alternative transportation for use of the town boards.
Yeah.
That's another mouthful.
Sorry, I have a habit of being wordy. But I felt like it would be important. It comes up a lot on trails. And Chuck, you can jump in here. You know, what are the standards for different types of trails that we use, and in maybe what location? Is a stone dust trail appropriate, or a dirt trail, or should a sidewalk be used, depending on, you know, who's using it, where it is? Same thing with sidewalks, potentially bike paths. If the planning board's looking at a major development, you know, giving them the tools to best design and include, you know, multimodal transportation there.
Well, it's really kind of assembling standards that be used for those various activities and those various modes of transportation. And
Yep.
Okay.
I don't know if you could figure a way to have that explained a little more. I read that one and had trouble deciding what you wanted to do there. Maybe you could expand that paragraph. I see what you mean about the trails and stuff like that, but I don't know if that could be expanded a little bit to give whoever reads it a better idea what you're talking about.
Yeah. I'll try to either reword it or add a note someplace, kind of giving further narrative as to what the intent is.
Okay.
Chuck, does that make sense for you?
Go ahead.
I was just, since Chuck's on the line, Chuck, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I'm good. I'm good.
Okay, the last one, revised town code to allow transit-oriented development. I say we give that one to Gary Davis.
It needs to be implemented.
I'm not exactly sure what this one means either. I mean, what, do we
It's,
not allow that
Right.
now, or what the real meaning of it is?
I recommend we scratch that one. I don't see what we can really do there and what we would need to change town code. I don't think there's anything in town code that precludes.
I think that there probably is, although we do have some flexibility in the areas that we want it. So right now, there's kind of like 3 hub spots, I guess, for RTS, down by FLCC, and then, Tops and Trolley Station Apartments or Liberty Apartments. All of those places are within the MUO area, so there is some flexibility accorded to them. They're all within, our designated growth nodes. But the zoning surrounding those areas right now is, in the Liberty Apartments case, either like restricted business or community commercial, and then community commercial on Tops or over by like FLCC area. So none of those districts are geared towards allowing kind of mixed use, higher intensity use near transit. And the benefit of that, at least for the transit agency, is that they don't have to add new stops, or they can use or get more riders potentially on their existing infrastructure, which is obviously good for them and helps them to kind of expand their abilities. Transit oriented development is generally it's probably a planning term, it's jargon. It could be a specific section of code that grants certain benefits, I guess, within a particular area. It could be like an overlay surrounding, where RTS stops are. Or in this case, it could just be a frame of reference to say, adopt a specific zoning code surrounding, where our transit stops are. We're doing that kind of with the form-based code, and I think that will likely accommodate it mostly in the uptown area, but around FLCC would still remain to potentially be addressed.
Well, Eric, isn't it, at the present time that even if you aren't on a regular stop, that you can call up RTS and make arrangements and they'd come pick you up anyways.
Right, but it's a lot more intensive for them and not really cost effective for them. So it's costing them a lot more money to go out of their way to grab you than it would if you could make it to a stop.
All right, so we just leave that alone then, is that agreeable or?
Sure. Anything.
Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns, ideas?
Yeah, I mean, that's the other thing. These action steps came out of those meetings, but there's probably a lot that aren't included here that you guys might know or be aware of that we should include. So please let me know if there's any that aren't here that should be.
Okay. Sounds good, Eric.
What
Is
about
there anything?
investment in infrastructure? Is that a transportation goal? I mean, we just identified our list of roads that really need to be, is that something that gets included here, or it's just covered by your 284 agreement and budget?
That's a good question. I don't know how to answer that.
Could you guys hear that?
Somewhat.
My question was whether a goal should be investment in infrastructure. A lot of our roads are aging and need work. Is that something that should be spelled out here, or is that not appropriate for this particular section?
Yeah, I would think so. I'll probably make it more specific to roads here, just because infrastructure is the next one, or the general group of infrastructure is the next one, and maybe it could be included there too. But so invest in aging roads, is that appropriate?
We'll just talk about investment in the future construction of roads.
Okay. Is there, I think a lot of my focus, the group's focus was kind of on like multimodal development. Regarding like vehicular traffic, what are the issues that you see, Jim, to be addressed and action steps for doing that?
As far as maintenance goes, or
Just anything? Could be maintenance, could be safety.
Safety, yeah.
well, there's always a safety factor at
Yeah.
any intersection or curve or elevation climb, and you got the cost that the town's going to incur as we start looking out over subdivisions that need all new replacement concrete gutters, masons, steel pipe, asphalt. So these are all costs that these short roads cost more to build than a standard rebuild of a standard mile road just because of the infrastructure involved.
Yeah, I think that's where the technology component comes into this, related to all those things you talked about, whether it's the surface of the road. I mean, Jim, imagine, pedestrian crosswalks. I mean, that has come a long way in terms of the type of material, something that will last for longer than 2 or 3 months, that those kind of things. This is all stuff that you want to stay on top of and out ahead of. And that's certainly all help and all assistance you can get in that regard, I'm sure would be welcome.
Hey, Jim, under measurables, looking at that first sheet there, you've got a road program that basically categorizes where the roads stand in terms of life usage and stuff like that. Would we want to put anything under measurables regarding that program and the status of roads within the town?
You could put a bullet point in there of how we determine that information and how to use that information going forward.
Well, it seems like it might be good to add that in as a kind of a measurable.
I would agree with that.
About it.
What's that, Jim?
I'll talk to Eric about it, how we put it in there.
Jim, somewhat related, how about bridges? Are we involved in any maintenance of bridges in terms of?
We have one bridge in our town that is maintained by the county.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to worry about rating of bridges and the capacity of those structures and all that. Okay, good.
No.
Be glad you don't have them.
That's right.
All right, well, let's move on now to, got 4 other projects. We've got,
Thank you, guys.
6 minutes each at most. So maybe we could just get a very quick update on the water project first, so we can.
So the water project, it's very busy at the pump station right now. The pumps are in, painting's going on the walls, electric's being done, roof's being put on, louvers being put in. So there's a lot going on at the pump station. Myself and Greg are working with the general contractor to get the first tank that was constructed this summer online, so we can start removing the old tank sometime after the first of the year, and get that constructed. I would imagine, to be wrong, but end of January to start the new pumps up, hopefully, to start pumping to the new tank, as long as, getting all the materials and everybody together at one time works. As everybody knows, materials are slow getting in, so. But overall, it's on schedule, it's moving along.
Okay. Any questions on that? Nope.
Good.
Let's move on to the Auburn Trail, where we stand with our portion of the Auburn Trail.
So Auburn Trail South, it's been surveyed based on our concept. That's where we identified that there was a pond that we potentially have to cross. On the airport property, and then we went back and we asked them to revise our alignment to kind of follow the fence line. So that's been sent to the FAA. We're going through that process to see whether or not that alignment will stick before we, go into another alternate alignment. They had a biologist out there, so it's all wetlands in that corner. So the first thing that you need to do with wetlands is, come up with your avoidance measures. So hence the alternative alignments. And then we've drafted some draft easements. I believe I gave, I think Doug, you guys you should have one for German Brothers. I was just gonna check and see if you've heard any feedback from those guys on that draft alignment. Doug's not
I
there.
still need to have a conversation. We're trying to schedule a time when I can meet with both of them through Zoom. But yeah, we're trying to make that work. So I don't have an answer on that
Well,
yet.
as that information comes in, well, we can obviously make some adjustments from there, but I think we try to get some of these little more difficult pieces kind of solidified, and then we'll plug, start all the way through our preliminary design. That's the southern portion.
Yeah.
So
How about the crossing of County Road 30 to the city?
yep, I have reached out to the city now. I think I have 3 separate occasions. So I do need to probably try to get Jim Sprague maybe in a room or something with Jim.
We're meeting with them Tuesday.
Are you?
On another issue,
Okay.
so we'll bring it up.
Yeah, this is just, I just want to get some sort of confirmation from those guys that, yeah, we can definitely cross where we're showing, right across from the Civic Center.
Yeah.
Because that is in the city, so that avoids having to go through the county for permitting.
Hey, Terry, on the Auburn Trail, we still also are going to need to schedule a Public Works Committee meeting where we can talk about the northern portion with those residents that might be impacted by that and the easement and all that. So obviously not probably around the holidays, but maybe that can be something we can do in January or so.
Okay.
Is that Brickyard Road, Doug?
Yes.
Okay. Next one was the sewer on County Road 28. We kind of exhausted the first 2 areas that were outlined in the sewer master plan from 2016 or whatever, like 15. Cheshire, both of them, Cheshire and Grandview Park areas. Cost was the issue, and a lot of the residents in Grandview Park have answered us now and said that they're not interested, primarily due to cost. Some have no interest whatsoever. So with those 2 removed, the next targeted area was County Road 28. So nothing we're going to resolve today, but I think something we have to start. Take a look at that plan again and see what was there and any updating that needs to be done. I presume probably we would proceed the same way we did in Grandview Park with maybe some survey first, and then I don't know if we use some of the numbers that were generated years ago. And
Yeah, I think we probably, it's worth a few hours for someone to probably update those numbers to make sure we're consistent before we send it out to the public.
that's something we could do. Asking Kathy and Doug. We have to
The
ask
governor's also, I think, in the process of getting ready to give us new things. Terry, we could definitely do a survey or send that out in information. That's not a problem. But I think we just want to confirm the numbers before we put it, as Greg was saying. I was listening to that. Yeah.
That's what Greg was saying. Maybe a couple of hours of MRB time would be well utilized to update the numbers and make sure everything is relatively current. So what we do present in the survey would be fairly accurate, so that people have a good idea what they'd be looking at. So, okay, go.
I'm
All
sorry I
right.
didn't answer right away. I was getting, as probably Doug was too, the governor's online and was getting about 10 messages to watch it. So I apologize. I was.
Oh no, is Monroe County closed? Am
I have
am I stuck here?
too many things. I'm with you guys for now. Then I'll get the bad news after.
Don't tell Andy we said hello. Last thing on the list was the agenda was water policy updates. Jim and Caitlin put together some recommended changes in the water district policy. Hopefully you've had a chance to look at them. If there are any comments, we can discuss them now.
Hey, Terry, I looked at them good. I think they're good, all of them.
Yeah,
I would agree.
we got Greg's vote.
All right.
Great. Well, this will be presented to the, I mean, be in January, this
Organization.
part of our update.
Correct.
Okay.
And then Eric, I'll have to reach out to you. Some of the sections in the water policy are also listed in town code, so we'll have to take a look at updating those as well.
Okay, no problem. Just let me know.
Well, we actually beat the clock.
You want to talk about this?
We got 17 minutes to talk about anything that anyone wants to talk about.
So I do have an updated plan for Outhouse West that incorporates Ecologic's updated building dimensions. And I think what we would do is probably just send this out to the project team as an update. We're ready to do grading. We just want to have confirmation from the whole project team that the building and the playground equipment is now in its final resting place before we go through that effort.
Yeah, Greg, we can do that, but I can tell you, I just had a meeting with them and they have confirmed that that building footprint is the building footprint. So.
Okay, well, that's good.
And then they are taking care of, just while we're talking about that, they are taking care of the foundation for that building, as obviously as well as the building, et cetera, et cetera. That's all part of their side of the house and what they're doing and they fundraise for. And it's actually, if you need to talk to, they're working with Floyd Brayburn is doing all of the foundation work, the basement work, and he's donating all that. And New Energy Works is doing the building. So.
Oh, that's excellent. All right, so the next immediate step that we need to do is get CME out there to do some soil boring. Yeah.
Good. Anything else?
We're probably in the process, you guys, of the governor is announcing the Finger Lakes has the highest rate in the entire state. So we'll see what he's saying here. So.
We may be the color of your shirt there, Bud.
We could be or darker. So.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Well, I
right.
guess that's about it. We'll schedule another meeting and when's the organizational meeting, Doug?
The 11th, January 11th.
Uh,
Officially, well, technically it's December 21st, but then we're reaffirming it on January 11th. So.
Okay. The Friday before that would be the first Friday in January, but I don't know what that is. 8th would be January 8th, so.
The-
That's
yeah.
done?
The
Done?
eighth.
Okay,
The first is a Friday, but I assume you don't want to meet that then.
what's it?
The first is a Friday, but I
Oh,
assume
yeah.
you don't
Oh,
want
no,
to meet
no.
that
No. The 8th would be, we'll set it up for then.
Is that when you want
Merry
to go
Christmas
over
to
the,
all and
Thanks.
stay safe.
is that when you want to go over the infrastructure portion of the comp plan as the next meeting?
Oh, do we have to?
Yes,
Sure.
please.
Yeah. If Santa Claus doesn't deliver, we will.
Okay.
That sounds good,
Thank
Eric.
you. Thank you, guys.
Have a good day.
Thanks, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
Thank you, guys.
Merry Christmas.
Merry
See you later.
Christmas.